On that topic, joining us now, contributing columnist with the Washington Post and conservative lawyer, our friend George Conway. George Conway, I wondered what that sounded like inside Trump's sort of war room or whatever it is that Trump hangs out in these days when Chuck Cooper, and I think you can help people understand just how conservative he is. He argued against conservative Ted Olson, who argued on behalf of marriage equality. Chuck Cooper was a lawyer on the other side, arguing against it. He represents currently Kevin McCarthy in a lawsuit against Speaker Pelosi. His clients read like a who's who of the CPAC keynote speakers of the past decade, John Bolton, Jeff Sessions, and others. He came out and yanked down, as I've been calling it, the skirt behind which Republicans were hiding, saying it's not constitutional to hold a former president accountable, to try them at all. He argues the opposite is true. His point is that the Constitution has this remedy of disqualifying for future office in place precisely for circumstances like that. Is that your read, George?
Absolutely. And what you say about Chuck is absolutely true. He is one of the most conservative lawyers, one of the most prominent conservative lawyers we have in the country. Is a longtime member of the Federalist Society. He was an assistant attorney general in the Reagan administration. As you mentioned, he represented John Bolton and the NRA and litigated against Ted Olson in the marriage equality case. And his argument is essentially a very simple, conservative, textual argument based upon the Constitution. What the provision that Trump relies upon is a provision that simply says that if you can remove someone who is a current officer of the United States, president, vice president, or other officer. It does not, it says that removal essentially is mandatory, that it's a mandatory minimum sentence, if you will, upon conviction. But it doesn't say that you can't try someone who resigned from office or left office at the end of their term. And the fact of the matter is, precisely because the other text in the Constitution talks about disqualification as a remedy, it pretty well makes clear that you can disqualify someone who committed an impeachable act while in office but then left office. And he doesn't get into it, but there's an additional argument that conservatives should hanker to, which is history. In 1787, when the Founding Fathers met to draft the Constitution, one of the biggest political scandals in the English-speaking world was about a fellow named Warren Hastings, who was Governor General, the King's Governor General in Bengal. And he had left office because of corruption. He had come back to England, and the House of Commons impeached him, and he was tried before the House of Lords. So the Founding Fathers of the United States were well aware of this history. They understood that former officers could be impeached. And then there's the history of the United States Senate. In 1876, there was a Secretary of War named William Belknap, who was engaged in corruption out in the West at Indian reservations or trading posts out there. And he resigned because he knew, like, in 2 hours, he was going to be impeached by the House. He ran up to the White House and presented his resignation to President Grant. Well, the House impeached him anyway, and the Senate tried him. And the Senate held a jurisdictional vote on whether to try Belknap, and they held 37-29. The Senate of the United States determined that, yes, it did have jurisdiction to try Belknap, even though he had resigned from office. So basically, all of the evidence, of the historical evidence in the text, is against Trump. And only through distortions has Trump and his lawyers managed to make an argument. In fact, one of the principal scholars of this issue is a man named Brian Kalt, who's a professor at Michigan State. And he went on Twitter yesterday and said that his article that the Trump people rely on was distorted by the Trump people. Mm-hmm. You know, he wrote this academic article a few years ago that laid out one side and the other side fairly, and then came out against the Trump position 20 years ago. And the Trump people distorted even that.
George, I'm not interested in this whip count to 17 because I think at this point the Republican Party has shown that they don't have a floor. There's no level they won't sink to in servitude. to Donald Trump, but I am interested in understanding from you who you think is interested in coming down, not on the right side morally, but of not looking like ignorant fools when it comes to the Constitution. Do you think that throws someone like Mitch McConnell into someone to watch if he changes his vote on the constitutionality question? And I'm just wondering if there's anyone who cares anymore about looking like they understand history or have deference to the Constitution.
Well, I hope that there is, but it's rather clear that they're looking for a way out, and they're looking for a way out because, I mean, this is, as you say, it's about, as you said in the opening, Nicole, it's about security, but it's really about more than that. This is about a president who literally tried to end constitutional democracy in the United States. And so the Republicans want to do everything, some of them want to do everything to avoid the merits of this dispute. And it's up to the House today to make the case that really there's no leg to stand on to avoid this. You cannot avoid this. And they should not want to avoid this because it was their mistake, their cowardice, the Senate's cowardice, for everyone except for Mitt Romney and those who are new to the office, their cowardice a year ago in failing to remove President Trump when he showed that he was willing to do anything to get himself reelected. It's their cowardice that led to this moment and this day.
George, a bunch of viewers have been asking, I don't suppose you have anything in your bag of tricks that could make this a secret ballot. People seem to be theorizing that if it were a secret ballot, a couple of Republicans might cross over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that if it were a secret ballot, it would be easier. I mean, witness what happened over in the House with the vote in favor of Liz Cheney. But the fact is that, yes, the Senate has the power to close its proceedings or to seal its votes. It does have the power to do that. I just think that it would be politically untenable to do that because you'd have the vote, and if he were removed, or I mean, not removed, but disqualified from further office, you'd have endless questioning about who voted which way. And sooner or later, people would say how they voted, and by process of elimination, people would figure it out. And it would be a circus. It would be a complete embarrassment, I think, to be that cowardly.